What's up guys, TechTine here, and I just want to take a second and thank you all so much for watching my content. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do so. Also, if you want to follow my Instagram, I'll leave it linked in the description below. It has sneak previews, and if you have any questions, DM me there. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. And this one is going to be a very fun and interesting video. So we're going to be reviewing the Samsung Galaxy A13 5G camera. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that I want to cover and get out of the way is the camera specs and what we get on paper. So you have a triple camera setup with a 50 megapixel main sensor accompanied by two other sensors, which are a 2 megapixel macro and a 2 megapixel depth sensor, which is already a massive upgrade from last year's A12, and a comparison between the A13 5G and the A12 is coming really soon, so stay tuned for that. And now, as far as the camera app itself, it's what you really would expect from Samsung, so very intuitive, easy to use, and quick at taking pictures, so the camera app definitely gets a thumbs up from me. But now I really want to get to the main reason why you guys are here. That is picture quality. Because to me, that matters more than just on-paper numbers and just a simple good camera app. So let's start and talk about the color and exposure. So the camera on the A13 5G loves to oversaturate photos. And in the first picture, the greens are saturated, which can be pleasing to some, but at the same time may not be pleasing to others. So if you're one of the people that really wants a more of a natural look, then you're just simply not going to get that in this phone. And the picture overall, though, it's decently sharp, and that's thanks to the 50 megapixel camera, and it's also detailed. The next picture actually gives us a much better perspective on how this phone tends to really oversaturate pictures, especially objects. So you can see that the color red here is kind of aggressive in terms of saturation, and in some scenarios it would look good. And you can consider that in this scenario, the oversaturation kind of looks good. Me personally, I would like to just tone it down just a little bit. So zooming in on the picture really shows us what this 50 megapixel sensor is capable of. And the photo still retains detail and sharpness. Now, there is slight noise. I did zoom in quite a bit, so keep that in mind. And then really in the next couple of pictures, it's still a similar theme throughout. So saturation seems to be something that this phone does well. And in addition, it does have also good exposure and can sometimes give you a balanced picture. So not all the time will it overexpose. So the picture of this cup, for example, so it's not overly saturated, and the exposure and white balance and contrast are kind of balanced. You can really see that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes you can get a balanced picture. So now in outdoor condition, in good daylight, it does also well. It keeps the picture well exposed and keeps shadows and contrast balanced. So the focus on this camera is definitely good, especially where there's a lot of detail to capture. So for example, in this photograph, in the foreground and the background, you can see that the stud is in focus and the background is decently blurred out for this bokeh effect. Now the next picture is kind of a more of a difficult scenario, and let me tell you this, it did a good job on it as well. The foreground has a lot of details in it, which makes it much harder to actually focus in on this subject, while the background, you have to balance the exposure because it's such a sort of a toned down exposure. Now, as far as capturing the detail, it did a good job. However, if I'm really being nitpicky, it did overexpose the background and the sunset in the background, but that's just me being nitpicky on a budget smartphone. So if I'm really looking at this from a budget phone perspective, then this is a fantastic photo, right? It does what you would expect. And now speaking of this dynamic range, so the dynamic range on here is exceptionally good, right? Especially if I'm only looking at this phone from a budget perspective. So it does a good job in bringing out the exposure in the sky, as well as kind of retaining the detail in the trees. So they're not perfectly detailed and exposed, but they're decent. It still does like to oversaturate this picture, which is okay, especially in this photograph. I guess it gives the sky more of a lively look, so I like it. And similar style, the next picture actually does a better job in focusing in and bringing out details in the grass, the snow, the trees, while also keeping the sky and the clouds kind of well exposed. So definitely gets a thumbs up from me. Now when we start to move to low light condition, it starts to struggle a bit, but that is to be expected. However, when it oversaturates, it actually gives this phone an advantage because it tries to bring more light and more color to the picture than it actually has. So I definitely give it its props for at least trying. And like I said, I mean, it's decent and it's fine. There is slightly more noise in low light, and again, that is to be expected. Now, the selfie camera is really disappointing. So it does oversaturate the picture, but the problem that I have with it is that it lacks sharpness, it lacks detail, and yeah, the selfie camera is a struggle here, so it's not really its strongest suit. Now moving on to the video, so this is a sample video that I want you guys to watch, and I'll leave the audio on, and then I'll give you guys some words on this video. As far as the video quality goes, I really, again, I'm gonna look at this from a budget perspective. This is impressive. It does a good job and checks pretty much most boxes as far as a budget video camera is capable of. And one thing that I really gotta give it props on is that it does really well and it's quite fast when it comes to focusing on subjects. So definitely gets a thumbs up, definitely impressed with the video quality. It's not perfect though, the audio is not really all that good. Now, let me give you a conclusion. So overall, definitely a competitive camera when looking at some phones at the same price point. It does a good job in almost all of the categories that you would expect a camera to pull through. And it gets my stamp of approval for sure. And with that being said, I mean, definitely a step up from the Galaxy A12. And I'm working on the comparison between the A13 and the A12, so make sure you subscribe for that. And with that being said, I mean, tell me what you guys think. Is the quality something that you would be interested in from the pictures that you guys saw? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it to your liking? I want to know what you think. Maybe you'll bring in a fresh perspective that I haven't looked at. And yeah, with that being said, I mean, thank you all so much for watching, and make sure you subscribe and stay tuned for more content. Thank you for watching.